We're here in Washington, D.C. to do something that no other NFT project or DAO really in the US would be stupid enough to do, which is finally deliver on the mission of giving people real ownership in crypto. When we launched 3 years ago, the SEC was suing everybody, any NFT project that was trying to do what we're doing now. And I've been pretty panicked for the last 3 years building this project. Now that Gary Gensler's gone at the SEC and they have a new chair, it truly could be a new beginning, not just for Coinage, but for the rest of crypto in the US. Today, we're finally bringing the battle directly to the SEC to talk about why building DAOs and digital co-ops here in the US can be good for everybody, for creators, and for fans to co-own something together. There are no guarantees in this game, but for everyone who's been a part of this, I think you already know how huge the stakes are. Because if we succeed at this, it truly will change the game for crypto in the US. But to know for sure, we have to go into the belly of the beast.
The SEC now filing suit against Coinbase.
This comes after the SEC also filed a similar suit against Binance on Monday.
It's an innovation, but innovations don't long thrive if they don't also build trust.
We are facing an existential threat today in Washington.
Is Ether a commodity or a security?
Yes or no?
And
Moving on.
You haven't provided any rules for how that can be done.
This is all coordinated, all done to try to kill this industry.
It is absolutely critical that the community participates in the political process and ensures that anti-crypto politicians are not elected into office.
On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman.
As SEC chairman, will you work to ensure that everyone who wishes to play by the rules, including those in the crypto industry, will be treated fairly?
Absolutely.
The SEC's new crypto task force gets ready to kick off today. First ever regulation roundtable.
Commissioner Hester Peirce will lead this group. That is music to the ears of the industry.
We really do want to hear from people and meet with people. So you're invited.
Very good. Coinage invited to DC. To be honest, one of the things is that a lot of the unclarity has directly resulted in crypto projects doing a lot of harm. Consumers don't really know what the hell they're buying into, they don't know how these things are regulated or how they're operated. And so the best outcome, and why we're here in DC, is to finally get clarity to be able to say, hey, buy a membership, join our DAO cooperative, become a member, one vote, truly democratized. And so all of us together are heading into the SEC as a coalition to finally get some clarity that DAO cooperatives can exist here in the US, not just for the betterment of our projects, but for the betterment of everybody. So to show the SEC the positives of DAO co-ops in the US, we teamed up with other builders hoping to get the same clarity, including the co-founder of Constitution DAO, Graham Novak, who led the charge for more than 17,000 strangers on the internet to make a people's bid for one of the last privately held replicas of the US Constitution.
The United States Constitution at $41 million. Sold $41 million, paddle 411.
We demonstrated that the edge of whatever we thought was possible with like individual communities on the internet was actually way greater.
And John Poller, the co-founder of ETHDenver, one of the leading crypto conferences in the world and also a Colorado registered DAO co-op, founded like Coinage to pioneer patronage dividends for the people who make us who we are. How do you feel about today?
You know, I try not to have too many expectations because if you don't have expectations, you can't be disappointed. So,
are you nervous?
No, not at all. I'm a let it unfold kind of guy.
Well, let me ask you this too, though, because I think it gets to the heart of why you and I are sitting on a bench about to go in and meet with the crypto task force. But if you, John, can think back to kind of when, as you say, your experiment began with ETHDenver, to be here now, heading into the belly of the beast. How does it feel?
When I was asked why I'm going to the SEC to talk to them about this, you know, they're walking into the enemy's territory and all this. I'm like, you know, whether you want to admit it or not, we need permission to get permissionlessness. But by the time that happens, it will be refined and it will work enough that everybody will be okay and happy. We need the initial permission to do it, and we need the permission to do it at a national level.
That's why I think, in terms of this meeting, it comes at a very interesting time because there are a lot of people who always pursue and we've seen this in the crypto space, regulatory capture. When things start to turn, who wants to battle for what? And who's giving something up by letting anyone kind of take the tools and build? And I think that, weirdly enough, crypto is kind of opposed to the idea of regulatory capture. We're not supposed to set up gatekeeping.
Well, openness, permissionlessness, market-driven outcomes. These are all sort of core principles around organizational structures. And that's why the blockchain technology that we use sort of preserves those integral structures, right? That's the idea behind the tech is, in a typical format, it gets corrupted, co-opted by, centralized powers of some version or another, and then the promise becomes a lie, right? Sadly, it's a feature, not a bug, to traditional organizational systems.
Yep.
They don't have two things. They don't have an internal economic engine that's one thing that you need. A lot of businesses have that, but the second thing is where they miss it. They don't have structural benevolence to their constituencies. And that includes their customers, it includes their distributors, their stakeholders, the contributors, everybody who's involved in this game that they've built. They only have responsibility to shareholders to maximize profits. That's a requirement of a C Corp. So when you're the CEO of a publicly traded company, for example, the only responsibility you have is number go up for the stock price, which means you have to do the pulleys and levers thing around every other constituency and take from them, zero-sum game-wise, to give to your shareholders. And so I think the misnomer, the thing that people miss is we are at the advent of a positive sum abundance-based game set. A tool set allows for a positive sum games, but the people trying to prevent this are still operating as if it's a zero-sum game, like somehow they've got to give something up. But my prediction is that once the cat gets out of the bag and everyone sees that you can not only multiply value in abundance, almost infinitely, they're not going to be opposed to it.
I'll be completely honest. The reason why I'm here is very much the same, but I feel like we would probably both admit we wouldn't be here if things hadn't changed. If Gary Gensler was still at the SEC, we certainly wouldn't be going in.
Well, that's actually the only reason I got involved in politics last year. When we invited Bobby Kennedy to come and speak at ETHDenver, I had zero aspirations of actually throwing my hat in the ring. But after talking with him, talking about the weaponized sort of rulemaking that these agencies have put on our industry arbitrarily, and then you kind of look at the game design and try to understand, well, why would they do that? Is it really about protecting retail interests or Main Street from predatory behavior? And the answer is no, it's not. It's based on the interest of the existing, excuse my French, but cartels that run things, and they see it as a huge vulnerability when actually I see it as a positive sum thing for everyone.
John and I and the rest of our DAO Co-op squad headed into the SEC for our meeting with the Crypto Task Force to explain why we want to bring co-ops on chain and hopefully secure the codified blessing of the SEC. And while we couldn't film the meeting, we could film our discussion after with the head of the Crypto Task Force, Hester Peirce. Commissioner Peirce, thank you so much for having us.
It's great to be here. It's great to do this in person.
We took you up on your invitation to come in here. I don't know how many other crypto projects have been doing that, but it seems like a lot more now that you guys have really said, no, we want to talk to you guys and learn about what's going on. So thank you for the invitation.
No, I appreciate you coming in, and I think a lot of other projects are taking us up on it. You can always look at the website and see who's meeting with us. We're trying to keep this as transparent as possible.
Being here, it's interesting to see and kind of think about Chair Gensler's pictures on the wall here kind of looming over us a little bit, which is interesting. Has anyone who's ever met with the Crypto Task Force interviewed you before? I thought just
you might be the first. You might be the first.
Because we just got out of the meeting with the Crypto Task Force, which again, I have to say, as a founder who's been building here in the US for 3 years, it was something that I was not sure a few years ago would ever be possible. But I think it just speaks to kind of the work that you guys with the Crypto Task Force has already done to kind of write that narrative. And truthfully, personally, I don't think we would have wanted to come in were it not for the invitation from you and kind of all the good work that you've done to build and regulate honestly. I think there are a lot of founders who are just kind of truly like trying to get this done in a way that like is good. So it was really fun to be here, I have to say.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I hope they asked you some good questions.
I'm not a lawyer, so a lot of this stuff goes over my head. But I do know in terms of building here, and you were at ETHDenver, that's where I saw you last in person. And from what I gather in terms of what the Crypto Task Force has issued in terms of statements, you did one on meme coins. There were a few others that kind of, aren't the same thing as Congress getting anything done in terms of maybe lasting power. I assume those are super important for you to kind of establish the new paradigm of, look, here's how we're thinking about things, to give people the transparency, to know which direction to zig or zag, which I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that early, again, as you say, it's not as durable as Congress doing it, but when we look at our jurisdiction to say some things just aren't within our jurisdiction, that allows us to focus our resources and time. It allows other people to think about, is this something in the security space or not, or can we do this without thinking about the SEC? There might be other rules out there, but I think that's helpful just to get people started. But I think the meetings with folks like you is important too, in helping us think about how should we prioritize, what would be useful to you, actually trying to build something. Yeah. What would be useful to you to have, what could prevent you from using a solution that we might develop. And that's why I do urge people to come in, because we don't want to develop a solution just sitting here by ourselves thinking about things. We really need people to say, hey, this is what we could actually use, or this would be totally useless to us because there'd be this other consideration that you haven't thought about.
I don't want to project what I think I understand about all of the conversations we've had over the years, but it does truly seem like we're on a bit of a precipice in terms of, for so long, builders in the US were afraid of offering any sort of real value when it comes to crypto. And now it seems like finally we are there in maybe that doesn't need to be the case anymore.
Well, and that's what I really do want to flip that, so that we're encouraging people who are offering real value instead of making it, it seems like before, if you were offering something of real value, you were more worried about getting hauled into the SEC for an enforcement discussion. Now I would like to flip that, so it really encourages people to pour their talents into building things that are useful, and that people that meet an actual need. Too much of what I was hearing before is we are designing things not to meet a need, but to get around the securities laws so that we don't get drawn in, and that just doesn't make sense.
Well, that to me is called, again, maybe this is shifting and now turning into an interview where I'm being interviewed, but I think that to me was kind of why we landed on the co-op model, because it was like, there are two ways you can look at that. And this has been very weird, and it's, again, kind of terrifying to have this conversation with you in the SEC, but at some point, you just lay it all out there. And the idea of hearing people talk about co-ops kind of being in their own thing, that again, through precedent, have been exempt from securities laws if they functionally, at the state level at least, kind of go through certain rules, and there's precedent for that. And the idea of talking to investors who say hey, are you doing that because that's a loophole? And that's so crazy that there's a part of someone's brain that kind of goes to, you're just getting around this thing. Whereas a normal person who hasn't seen the war on crypto play out over the last few years could kind of functionally understand that there's existing precedent just because that's a thing that has existed for decades. And so it's very strange to kind of have to defend even kind of building and have to answer oh, is this a carve out? Because no, it's just, it was there.
Well, so that's the thing, right? On the one hand, there is this precedent out there that we can build on, and that's what I want to do so that people can figure out if they're not in the securities bucket at all. But I also want to build on the existing securities rules that we have to see if we can adjust them in a way that doesn't compromise our objectives as a securities regulator to allow tokenized things that are tokenized but are in the securities bucket, and to figure out a way to move forward so that people can really make the choice that makes the most sense for what they're trying to achieve.
Well, I mean, I think, again, our role here, I think, perhaps, is just kind of documenting this. And after you invited us down here, it was exciting to come down to DC and come into the SEC building and actually talk about this and be heard. And so I think it speaks to kind of, again, the great work that you guys have done at the Crypto Task Force to even get us here.
Well, I hope others will take me up on that invitation too and come in and have the conversation. And we really want written input too. So, come, if you don't want to come in personally, if you feel uncomfortable, then write into us. But we really are eager to hear from people. And if you think there are things that we should be prioritizing, tell us that. If you think that we're going about things the wrong way, tell us that. This is a group project. It cannot be a regulator-only project. That's been the problem in the past, is that we've not listened. So we're open to constructive criticism as well.
Well, I mean, structurally, the way that works too, I know you always say that you don't speak for your fellow commissioners, and
Oh, I didn't tell you that. My views are my own views as a commissioner, not necessarily those of the SEC or my fellow commissioners.
See, there you go. We've done this so many times that I know your lines now at this point, but functionally the same way for us too as a co-op. And so, I speak for our members who have kind of been there with us through the thick and thin to kind of build this. And I think trying to find projects that are trying to build here in the US and do things, I think are going to be as important as figuring out a right way to write the rules. And so it's been exciting. And again, thank you for letting us come down.
Thanks for coming by, and again, I hope other people do as well, and I hope we can make the U.S. a place where people don't want to avoid anymore, but they actually want to come here, they want to be part of building the regulatory framework, and then they want to be part of using that regulatory framework to build really cool and interesting things.
I think that's what we're up to, but I guess we shall see how this next inning goes. But Commissioner Peirce, thank you as always.
Thanks, Zach. Great to see you.
Appreciate it. All right, so we just got out of our meeting with the Crypto Task Force, and I'm not gonna lie, at times things did get a little bit contentious in terms of people sharing their frustrations building here in the US, and of course on the other side, some of those frustrations in terms of trying to police. But I will say, at the end of the meeting, it did truly feel like both sides were being heard, and that there is hope that this was just the first step in a process to finally land on what everyone in crypto has been asking for, which is regulatory clarity and a new beginning, a new chapter, not just for the SEC, but for founders here who have tried to build for years in the US to finally get a sigh of relief. So thank you for coming along with us on this journey, and we'll continue to update you as we learn more, as Coinage pioneers this new model with you guys, with us, and hopefully with the SEC Crypto Task Force. For Coinage, I'm Zach Guzman. We'll see you again soon.